It wasn't just a siege. It was the precise geometric center of hell on Earth. But look closer at the ashes. There is a mystery buried here that logic cannot explain. Why did the Sixth Army, a technological giant designed to conquer continents, freeze to death in the ruins of a city that no longer existed? Why did the Luftwaffe's most decorated aces, men who treated the sky as their private hunting ground, suddenly begin to sweat when they checked their mirrors? And how did a wooden plane, held together by pine resin and desperation, manage to tear apart the masterpieces of German engineering? The history books give us the dates. They give us the map coordinates, but they miss the silence between the explosions. They forget the absurdity, because the only thing standing between the Third Reich and the total collapse of the Soviet Union wasn't a battalion of hardened commandos. It wasn't a secret weapon. It was a 21-year-old girl with bleached blonde hair, whom her own commanders considered a joke. She was the ultimate underdog, a woman fighting a war that didn't even have a uniform that fit her body. Why did the most paranoid regime in history ignore the only tactic that could save them? And why was the name of the savior erased from the very monuments she helped to build? The answer wasn't in the classified vaults. It was in the hands of Lydia Litvyak and in the dust of time. It's September 13th, 1942, Stalingrad. The air doesn't smell like air anymore. It smells of pulverized brick, unrefined oil, and roasting meat. The Volga River is actually burning, slick with leaked petroleum, creating a wall of black smoke that chokes the sun. This is the moment where the Soviet Union is supposed to die. To understand the sheer scale of the desperation, you have to look at the logistics of the apocalypse. The Germans have air superiority. They hear of the Messerschmitt Bf 109, a Predator, made of aluminum and precision optics. The Soviets are bleeding out. They are losing pilots faster than they can train them. The average life expectancy of a new pilot over Stalingrad is less than 24 hours. The system, the Kremlin, is paralyzed. They have issued order number 227, not one step back. But you cannot stop a tank with a slogan. So, in a spasm of panic, they commit an unthinkable reserve. They open the files they swore they would never use. They activate the 586th Fighter Aviation Regiment. On paper, it looks like a standard reinforcement order. In reality, it is a desperate experiment. These are not soldiers. They are teenage girls. They are textile workers, university students, daughters of farmers, and they are being asked to step into the cockpit of the Yak-1 to stop the end of the world. But the system is cruel. It doesn't adjust for them. It throws them into the grinder. When these women arrive at the airfield, they are handed men's uniforms. The tunics hang to their knees. The boots are 3 sizes too big, causing them to shuffle like children playing dress-up. The male officers watch them with a mix of pity and disgust. To the establishment, these women are a publicity stunt, a waste of good fuel. And then there is the machine itself. We need to talk about the Yak-1. History often romanticizes fighter planes, but we need to look at this with a forensic eye. This is not the sleek, all-metal Predator the Germans are flying. The Yak-1 is a compromise born of poverty. It is a black box of terrifying fragility. The German planes are stressed skin aluminum. The Yak is a frame of steel tubing wrapped in plywood and fabric. When a pilot pushes the engine to its limit, the physics of combat take over. The mechanic of death is simple. If a cannon shell hits a German wing, it punches a clean hole. If a shell hits the resin-impregnated wood of a yak, it shatters. It splinters like dry bone. And because the wood is soaked in flammable resin, it doesn't just break, it cremates the pilot. The engine coughs smoke into the cockpit. The exhaust fumes cause carbon monoxide poisoning, and the visibility is a death sentence. Into this wooden coffin steps Lydia Litvyak. She is small, absurdly small. She stands on the tarmac, the wind whipping her hair. In a world of drab olive and gray, she has done something dangerously individualistic. She has dyed her hair blonde with peroxide. It is a flash of rebellion, a signal that she is still a woman, even here at the edge of the grave. She looks less like a soldier and more like someone who got lost on the way to a library. And the system hates her for it. The Soviet military is a machine built on crushing uniformity. It does not know how to process a warrior who picks wildflowers and tucks them into the instrument panel of a weapon of war. She approaches her assigned aircraft, Yellow 44. A senior mechanic, a man with grease permanently etched into his skin and exhaustion in his eyes, blocks her path. This is the resistance personification. He is the face of the obstacle. He doesn't salute. He sneers, looking down at her petite frame. "Go home, little girl," he mutters, spitting on the tarmac near her oversized boots. "The Luftwaffe will eat you before you clear the runway. This isn't a nursery. You're going to waste my plane." He represents the crushing weight of the establishment. To him, war is a mathematical equation of testosterone and muscle. He cannot conceive that the solution to the German superiority isn't strength, but finesse. He sees a girl. He fails to see the predator. Lydia doesn't argue. She doesn't have the rank, and she doesn't have the voice to shout over the roar of engines. She simply walks past him and climbs onto the wing. But once inside the cockpit, the reality of her physical disadvantage becomes a crisis. She straps in, and her heart sinks. She cannot reach the controls. The Yak-1 was built for the average Soviet male. 5'9", broad-shouldered, heavy. Lydia is drowning in the seat. Her feet dangle inches from the rudder pedals. Without the rudders, she cannot yaw. She cannot aim. She cannot survive. The manual says she is unfit for duty. The protocol says she should disembark. So, she does what the system would never put in a manual. She pulls out a knife. In the dim light of the hangar, while the mechanic turns his back, Lydia takes her flight boot's government property and slices the leather. She stuffs the toes with wool and rags, packing them tight, adding the 2 critical inches she needs to connect with the machine. It is a crude, desperate surgery. It is a quiet, jagged act of adaptation. While the generals in Moscow are drawing theoretical lines on maps, Lydia Litvyak is hacking away at her own uniform just to have a fighting chance. But outside the hangar, the enemy is making a fatal calculation. The German High Command, peering through their Zeiss binoculars from the warm safety of their forward operating bases, saw the lack of Soviet aircraft as proof of victory. They believed the Red Air Force was broken. They treated the empty sky as a sign of submission. But they had fatally underestimated the nature of their enemy. It wasn't that the Soviets had given up. It was that they were reloading with something the Germans couldn't predict. The Luftwaffe aces joked over the radio about the Russian schoolgirls. But that laughter was the sound of a closing trap. They thought they were hunting sheep, unaware that the shepherd had just sharpened her teeth. Back in the cockpit, Lydia connects. This is where the difference between training and instinct becomes lethal. The instructor saw a girl who was too short, but Lydia possesses a cognitive bridge that the experts missed. Before the war, she wasn't just a pilot. She was an instructor who viewed flight not as a series of mechanical inputs, but as a fluid dance. She has a terrifyingly high spatial awareness. Where the male pilots wrestle the yak, fighting the heavy stick and the torque of the engine with brute force, Lydia feels the air pressure on the wings. She understands the machine's fatal flaw. Its lightness is actually its secret weapon. Because it is wood, it is light. Because it is light, it can turn inside the heavy German metal. She realizes that to survive, she doesn't need to be stronger. She needs to be closer. The engine roars to life. It spits blue flame from the exhaust stacks. The wooden frame shakes violently, rattling her teeth, vibrating the small bouquet of wildflowers she is wedged next to the gun sight. Lydia Litvyak pushes the throttle forward. The boots stuffed with rags press against the pedals. She lifts off the runway, the grand crumbling silhouette of Stalingrad falling away beneath her wheels. She is flying a piece of plywood into the most violent airspace in human history. And for the first time, the white lily is in her garden. February 11th, 1943. 12,000 feet above the Donets Basin. The temperature in the cockpit is 20 degrees below zero. The cold is so aggressive, it feels like a physical weight pressing against the chest. But Lydia Litvyak does not feel the cold. She has transcended the fear that paralyzed her 5 months ago. She has evolved. She is no longer just a pilot. She has been granted the rare and lethal status of Okhotnik, a free hunter. This is a permission slip for murder. While other squadrons are tethered to bomber escorts or rigid patrol lines, Lydia is allowed to roam the clouds, searching for targets of opportunity. And on the side of her fuselage, painted in crude, bright strokes, is a warning, a white lily. It is a psychological taunt. To the Germans, it is a ghost story. They have begun to whisper about the white witch who appears out of the sun. But whispers do not stop bullets. And today, the German war machine sends its best to silence her. Enter Staff Sergeant Erwin Maier. He is not a conscript. He is a predator of the aristocracy. A triple Iron Cross recipient. An ace with 11 confirmed kills. He flies the Messerschmitt Bf 109 G2, a masterpiece of German engineering. It is faster, heavier, and better armed than anything the Soviets possess. Maier is cruising at altitude, scanning the horizon with the bored confidence of a man who believes he is untouchable. He spots a lone Yak-1 below him. He sees the wooden wings. He checks his altimeter. To Maier, this is not a fight. It is a math problem he has already solved. The mechanic of death is simple physics. The Messerschmitt is an energy fighter. It dives fast, strikes hard, and climbs away before the enemy can react. The Yak is slow. It shouldn't stand a chance. Maier tips his wing. He dives. The engine of his Messerschmitt screams as he builds up speed, closing the distance in seconds. He lines up the Yak in his sights. He expects the Soviet pilot to panic, to bank away, exposing the belly of the plane to his cannons. He treats the silence as submission, but he has fatally underestimated his opponent. It isn't surrender. It is the calm before the snap. Lydia sees him. She doesn't panic. She doesn't run. She waits. She holds the stick with a terrifying lightness, counting the heartbeats. 3, 2, 1. Just as Maier's finger tightens on the trigger, Lydia kicks the rudder. The Yak-1 doesn't fly, it snaps. Because it is made of wood, it is incredibly light. Lydia pulls the stick back into her stomach, forcing the plane into a violently tight turn that a metal plane could never match. The black box of aerodynamics betrays the German ace. The heavy Messerschmitt, moving too fast, cannot follow the turn. It compresses against the air, sliding wide like a car on ice. Maier overshoots. In a split second, the hunter becomes the prey. He looks back, expecting to see the empty sky. Instead, he sees a propeller spinning inches from his tail. He sees the flash of muzzle brakes. He sees a white lily. Lydia fires. She doesn't spray bullets. She paints them. A short, controlled burst tears through Maier's engine block. Oil splatters his windshield. The masterpiece of German engineering shudders, chokes, and begins the long, smoking fall to earth. Maier bails out. His parachute opens, a white silk flower drifting down into the Soviet snow. But the true violence of this story isn't the dogfight. It is what happens on the ground. Maier is captured immediately. He is dragged to the Soviet airfield, his uniform muddy, but his arrogance intact. He demands, in furious German, to speak to the pilot who shot him down. He believes he was bested by a Soviet ace, perhaps a colonel, a veteran with scars and gray hair. He wants to shake the hand of a worthy adversary. The Soviet commander smiles and points to the corner of the room. Lydia is standing there. She is still wearing her flight suit. Her blonde hair is messy from the helmet. She looks like a student who has just come in from the cold. Maier freezes. He looks at the commander, then back at the girl. He laughs. It is a sharp, barking laugh of disbelief. He thinks it is a Bolshevik joke. He refuses to believe that this petite creature destroyed his machine. "Don't insult me," he spits at the translator. "I want the man who flew the plane." Lydia doesn't shout. She doesn't gloat. She simply steps forward. Through the translator, she begins to speak. She describes the fight, not vaguely, but with forensic precision. She describes the exact angle of his dive. She describes the moment he hesitated. She describes the smoke trailing from his left wing tank before the engine died. She dissects his failure. The laughter dies in Maier's throat. The color drains from his face. This is the moment the system breaks. The Nazi ideology is built on the concept of the Übermensch, the superior man. It cannot exist in a room where a subhuman Russian girl has just proven she is faster, smarter, and deadlier than the Aryan elite. He looks at her hands, small, grease-stained hands that ended his career. He pulls the gold cross from his tunic and offers it to her. Lydia looks at the medal, this symbol of the regime that burned her country. She doesn't take it. She doesn't want his respect. She wants him to know he lost. She turns her back on him. But while Lydia is winning the air war, the ground is shifting beneath her. The system she fights for, the Soviet regime, is watching her fame grow. And in the paranoid halls of the Kremlin, a hero is often just one step away from being a traitor. They love the headlines she generates. The white lily of Stalingrad. It boosts morale. But they are watching her. They are waiting for the moment the flower wilts. Because in the Soviet Union, You are useful until you are broken. And the war is not done with Lydia Litvyak yet. August 1st, 1943, the Ural region. The sky over Kursk is not blue. It is a bruised purple, stained by the exhaust of 3,000 aircraft fighting for the same patch of oxygen. This is the largest air battle in human history. Lydia Litvyak is tired. It is a bone-deep exhaustion. She has flown 3 sorties already today. She has been wounded 3 times in the last year. There is shrapnel in her leg, but she refuses to stay on the ground. The white lily has begun to wilt, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the war. Her mission is simple: escort a group of Il-2 Sturmoviks. These are the flying tanks of the Red Army, slow, heavy, invincible against ground fire, but helpless against fighters. Lydia is their shield. But the Germans have learned. They no longer duel her one-on-one. They have abandoned chivalry for mathematics. As the formation crosses the front line, the clouds above them break open. 8 Messerschmitt Bf-109s dive from the sun. It is an ambush designed by a machine that has stopped underestimating her. They are not looking for a dogfight. They are looking for an execution. Lydia sees them first. The mechanic of death is absolute. The Sturmoviks are too heavy to turn. If the Germans reach them, it will be a slaughter. So Lydia makes a choice that defies every survival instinct in the human brain. She does not dive for safety. She pulls the stick back. She turns her wooden Yak-1 directly into the face of the swarm. 1 girl. 8 aces. She fires, disrupting their formation, forcing them to break their dive. She buys the bombers time. It is a suicidal distraction. The Germans react with predatory efficiency. 2 of them isolate her. They bracket her plane. The time freeze begins. For a moment, the roar of the engine seems to fade. There is only the vibration of the stick in her hand and the white clouds below. She is surrounded by the best technology the Third Reich can produce. Lydia dives toward a cloud bank, a desperate attempt to vanish into the mist one last time. The German guns flash. There is no cinematic explosion, no final radio message, no dramatic farewell. Her plane simply slips into the white vapor. The Germans circle, waiting for her to emerge. The Soviet ground controllers call her call sign. Yellow 44, come in. Yellow 44. The static hisses back. The clouds keep their secret. The white lily is gone. But the tragedy of Lydia Litvyak is not that she died. In war, soldiers die. The tragedy is what the system did to her ghost. When a pilot does not return, and there is no wreckage found, the Soviet machine does not grieve. It suspects. The logic of the Kremlin is paranoid and cold. If we cannot find the body, she might have defected. She might be drinking champagne with the Germans. Instead of a hero's funeral, Lydia Litvyak is branded with the most shameful stamp in the Red Army: missing in action. It is a bureaucratic purgatory. Because she is missing, her family is denied her pension. Her name is whispered, not celebrated. The mechanics who loved her are told to forget her. For 47 years, the woman who ruled the skies of Stalingrad is erased. While the men she saved grew old, wore medals, and marched in parades, Lydia lay in a shallow crater in the middle of a field, hidden under the rusted, rotting wing of her wooden plane. She was the underdog who saved the empire, and the empire repaid her with silence. It wasn't until 1979 that two young searchers, digging through the mud of the Oral region, hit something hard. They pulled back the earth and found the carbonized remains of a Yak-1. Inside, they found a small, petite skeleton. And even then, it took another decade of fighting the bureaucracy. It wasn't until 1990, just moments before the Soviet Union itself collapsed, that the stamp was finally changed. Mikhail Gorbachev signed the paper. Lydia Litvyak, hero of the Soviet Union. She was finally given her gold star. But she was 47 years late for the ceremony. This story is a mirror. Lydia Litvyak's life exposes the ultimate friction between the human spirit and the massive system. The system saw a girl who was too short, a pilot who was a liability, and finally, a ghost who was a traitor. The system was wrong every time. It makes us ask a difficult question about our own world. Who are the Lydias we are ignoring today? Who are the people solving our impossible problems while we mock their methods or ignore their contributions? History is often written by the people who build the monuments, not the people who fly the planes. Lydia didn't fight for a statue. She fought because she was the only one who could. She proved that even when the machine is broken and the odds are impossible, the spirit can still fly. If you believe that stories like Lydia's stories of those who were erased by the very systems they saved deserve to be remembered, please join our ranks by liking this video and subscribing. It helps us dig the truth out of the mud. We have synthesized this narrative from reputable historical archives and verified sources. However, the fog of war often extends to the history books. If you spot any inaccuracies or have additional details to share, please correct us in the comments. We strive for the absolute truth, and your knowledge helps us get there. Thank you for keeping history alive.